Okay, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to cover chapters 8 and 9 today and go over a couple of handouts in class. So the handout that you have already is going to be talking about monthly food costs. So we're going to look at how that ties into your inventory. Okay, so we're going to start off with some definitions. Our closing inventory is a physical inventory at the end of a period. So like it typically is done at the last day of the month or the last day that the restaurant is open in the month. You count up all of the inventory that you have. And if you're in the kitchen, you're probably just going to be concerned about how much, like how many gallons of milk that you have. But in the bookkeeping office, they're going to be concerned about how much is that milk worth. So they're going to assign a dollar amount to it. Okay, intra-unit transfer. I feel like we should have talked about this already. It's food or beverage transfer between departments in a single hotel, restaurant, or similar establishment. So this is one building that these transfers take place. So I worked at the hotel resort Beau Rivage. We were in the pastry kitchen. We did the desserts for most of the hotel. So we would transfer the cost of the desserts to the banquets facility or to the buffet or to the fine and dining restaurant or the coffee shop or the room service. So every month the hotel would then find out for each one of those units what their food cost percent was, if they were making money or losing money, that type of thing. So that is intra, like within. Inter-unit transfers, food and beverage transfer between units in a chain. So the McDonald's here by the hospital runs out of quarter pounders. They can call over to, there's several other in the area, North Canal, there's one up Highway 1. And whoever has like a bigger inventory can transfer a couple of cases over to them. So that they're going to do paperwork. There's going to be a transfer of the cost of those 2 cases to the restaurant here by the hospital. There's something called grease sales. How many of you have seen where our grease dumpster is outside? Okay, not very many. Right beside, there's a break-in area with a fence that has our big trash bin in it, and beside it is a little cylinder on wheels that we pour our used grease in. A couple times a year, a company comes in, sucks out all the grease, they measure it, and then they give us a check for, I don't know, $20 or $30, because then they're going to take that grease and turn it into something. Okay. There are 5 methods of valuing your physical inventory. So that's assigning a dollar amount to your inventory. You have to pick one of these ways and stick to it for accounting purposes. Whenever you do your tax returns, if you get audited, the IRS is going to want to know how do you assign value to your inventory. And you don't have to know all of these. We're not going to, it's not really going to be a component in the class. But one way is the actual purchase price. And to be able to do that, you would have to, like if you have canned goods, you'd have to like put the actual purchase price per can on each can so that when somebody's taking inventory, they not only count how many cans, but how many cans that cost X dollars and how many cans that cost Y dollars. That's a lot of work. Okay. Number two, you can assume that you do a rotation that is first in, first out. So you're always using the oldest product first, which is what you're supposed to do in a restaurant. And the way that that works is that you're going to look at your invoices and look for the freshest product that you purchased. And if you bought 5 cans last week and 5 cans the week before, and they're different prices, and you have 7 cans of inventory, you'll take a look at the 5 cans that you purchased last week, assign that price to them, and then the other 2 cans, you'll assign the price purchased from the week before, even if it's totally opposite. Weighted average purchase price, it's a little more complicated. If you buy things every week, you can go ahead and say I bought 3 cans at $7 this week, and then I bought 8 cans at $6.50 the next week, and do it for all 4 weeks in the month. And then just do like a weighted average. So your average can comes in at, let's say, $6.75. Then you can just assign that to the value of each can in inventory. An easy way is the latest purchase price, where you look at your last invoice and say that's the price that's on every can that we have in inventory. And then number 5 is the opposite of number 2, where you can assume that you're doing just the opposite of what a restaurant should do. You wouldn't necessarily be doing this. You still want to rotate your product first in, first out. But for accounting purposes, you can say this is what you're doing, and take the costs from the early purchases in the month and go as far as you have physical inventory and use those actual purchased prices. So you don't have to remember any of that. It's just, you got to pick a way of valuing your inventory. You've got to be consistent the whole way through with it. And you can't, sometimes it would be an advantage whenever prices are going up, to have a higher valued inventory. You pick one of the ones where it's either actual purchase price or latest purchase price if you're trying to get a high dollar value on your inventory. But you can't just go month to month switching your routines. So some important chapter formulas. This one on top, cost percentage, always going to be a cost divided by a sales figure. Food cost percent, we've seen this one any number of times. Cost of food sold divided by food sales. This cost of food sold is going to be an important number. We're going to go through that today. Our total inventory is going to be our opening inventory plus the closing inventory. And it's the middle of October, so like the last inventory that we would have would be that for September 30th. The closing inventory on September 30th is equal to the opening inventory on October 1st. And then average inventory is just going to be your total inventory divided by 2. And the inventory turnover is going to be your total food cost divided by your average inventory. Okay, so anybody works in a restaurant, they feed you a family meal. ever, anybody. When I first started working at McDonald's in high school, they didn't give us food either. We had to go have a manager wait on us and buy at full price. Wanted to eat during a long shift. Friends of mine that worked at Wendy's, which was a brand new thing back then, they had to pay 50 cents so they could get whatever they wanted on the menu. So different places do different things. So the cost of employee meals, you could take the actual cost of separate issues. So you could have a cook that would cook meals for the family, and they would do their own requisitions. They wouldn't use any other ingredients in the kitchen. They would have their own ingredients, and then you could keep track of your costs that way. Right, everything that that person requisitioned was going to go into employee meals. You can come up with a prescribed amount per meal per employee. So you could just say that you're going to allow $5 food cost per meal per employee. It didn't matter like where the ingredients came from, or it didn't matter where the ingredients came from. And we'll see later why having an employee meal cost is going to mean something. You could have a prescribed amount per period. So like for a week, an employee might cost you $25 in food cost. And you could also take a sales value and multiply it by a cost percent. So if you were actually serving things off of your own menu, you would have a good idea of what your food cost percent is. You could charge them just for the cost of that food. So you would take your recipe cost cards or a burger and fries and have that costed out. And every time somebody got a burger and fries, that's what it would be. You got a bowl of soup, sales cost, or the actual food cost of the soup. Okay, so we need to determine the cost of food consumed by people who are paying us full price for it. Okay, there's a lot of other things that happen to the food in the restaurant, but we need to figure out the actual cost of the food that the guests are paying for. So there's a list of things that we add together, which would be our opening inventory and our purchases. For the kitchen, we transfer liquor from the bar, so that's an addition to our food cost. And then transfers from other units. So we had, when I worked at Beau Rivage, we would make carrot cakes in the pastry kitchen. We didn't have a way of shredding carrots, and we weren't going to order 100 pounds of shredded carrots. They didn't sell shredded carrots in that kind of packaging. So we would order carrots, or we ask Garden Manger Kitchen to do that. They would order a 100-pound sack of carrots. They would clean them and shred them for us, and then they would transfer that 100 pounds of carrots to us. So that was the way that we got the food cost from that. Things that we're going to subtract off are going to be our closing inventory, food to the bar, which is, if you look at the bottom of the screen, the handout, we have food that would go to the bar, garnishes for beverages, if they're serving Bloody Marys, the olives, celery, any kind of pickled vegetables that you're sending out there. I can't remember which, there's a local Mexican restaurant that I think on Friday nights they put out like a little taco bar or nacho bar. that the guests don't pay for, but it's to attract people to the bar to increase bar sales. But the kitchen isn't getting anything out of that food cost. It's coming out of their inventory, but it's totally for the bar. So you're going to deduct that type of food. Transfers to other units. So whether we were, once we got the carrots for the carrot cake, we would go ahead and bake and decorate the carrot cakes. And then either send them to banquets or to the buffet or whoever was going to get the carrot cakes. And then there would be a paper transfer. They got this many carrot cakes, and this is how much each carrot cake costs. So that would come off of our food cost and go on to the people who are actually selling it. We're going to subtract our grease sales because we did pay for that grease, but we're actually getting some money back for it. But it's not really like selling a steak or a sandwich. Gratis to the bar. If you're doing something that you get it free at the bar, you might have a special guest in that you wanted to send some food out to, but you're not going to get any money out of it. Promotion expense. If you have, if you do any type of catering, you might have people come in and do a tasting. So you'll have like several different items off of your catering menu for them to taste. And you're not going to charge them full price to do that tasting because you want to get their business. So that could be a promotion expense. And then the cost of your employee meals. Because usually you're giving those at a lower cost than actual full sales price. Does anybody work anywhere where they have to pay full sales price for their meals at what restaurant? Really? Okay. Oh my. All right. So that's, if you're looking at the sheet that you have, like you can put little plus signs and minuses by the things where they belong on the handout, because that's basically what we're going to end up doing. Okay, so okay, so this is our handout. This is our calculating our monthly food cost. So we were given all the numbers that we have here. We were already given and have figured out. If we take a look, we have opening inventory and purchases for the month. And we're going to calculate total available. So are we going to add those things or subtract? Gives us 35,000. We know the closing inventory at the end of this month. And that comes to 16,000. So we're subtracting that because we still have that in inventory. We know we didn't do anything with that product. So cost of food issued is $19,000. How much the kitchen has asked for out of the storage. Cooking liquor. So this anything that the kitchen needed to add to their recipes. It could be beer, it could be some kind of wine, it could even be some kind of a spirit that they would be cooking with. Anything that they had to transfer from the bar, they're gonna have to add that into their food cost. So we're gonna add these numbers together. Subtotal here. So that's our subtotal is $19,200. Then we're going to have food to the bar, steward sales, and promotion expense. So we haven't talked about steward sales. Does anybody know what steward sales refers to? You see this in hotels, larger operations, where there are a lot of departments. You have, especially like at a casino, you have the people who work the tables, the dealers, the managers, people who do purchasing, people do housekeeping. Um, so in this picture for steward sales, it could be that like one of the benefits of working there is you can buy food at cost. So like this would be like pick up sandwiches and things to go. It's not your lunch that you're going to eat, but something that you would take home for you and your family. So we're not selling it at full price, we're selling it at food cost. We used to do this kind of thing for Thanksgiving at Beauregard. We would bake pies for Thanksgiving, and then the hot food kitchens would do like turkey and the sides, so that people could buy those things at cost, take them home, or eat them, have their Thanksgiving dinner, because it was pretty likely you were going to work on Thanksgiving. So we're not going to include that in our cost of food sold. So we're going to subtract that. From the 19,200. Pardon me? All of these, all three of these add up to the $606. So the food that went to the bar, the steward sales, and the promotion expense all get subtracted from the cost of food sold. And then the last thing that we'll take off is our cost of employee meals for the month. And that's going to be a deduction as well. Okay, so then we can compare that number to our food sales and get an accurate food cost percentage. I think we've already had a question in one of the quizzes about why it's so important to write up transfers from the kitchen to the bar. And it really doesn't have to do with inventory and ordering, but it has to do with the food cost in the kitchen. Things are disappearing basically, and you have to assume that they went out in your whatever food you were selling. So your food cost percentage is going to look higher than it really should. That makes sense? Because you send out however much stuff to the bar or any of these other things. Okay, so So daily food cost is going to be very similar to the monthly food cost. Okay, so we've talked about this directs and stores. So in our daily food costs, we're also going to take into account those items that are direct cost to us on that day. So if we had like fresh bread delivered every day for sandwiches, we're going to take that cost and put it onto our daily food cost, as opposed to if we got cases of frozen bread and we just pull that out of the storage whenever we needed more bread. So stores purchases, the ones that go into inventory, are added to daily food cost whenever they are issued from the storage facility to the kitchen. So when the kitchen says, I need dinner rolls or I need sirloin steaks, they're going to do up a requisition, it'll be documented, that cost is going to go onto the kitchen that day. Okay, the important thing here is that you have to have documentation. You have to have a storage facility that is secure so that not anybody can just walk in, take something, use it in the kitchen, or take it home with them, because you're never going to really know what happened to it. Transfers, these chapters to me are out of order. We've already talked about transfers. Opening inventory, purchasing, total available is the sum of the beginning inventory plus all of your purchases. Closing inventory is the dollar value of all the food on hand at the end of the accounting period. And that's always going to be the last business day of the month. Again, cost of food consumed is the actual dollar value of all food used or consumed by the operation, not employee meals. Transfers. And so anything again going out of the kitchen to the bar or some other place is subtracted from food cost, and then anything that you transferred in is added to your food cost. So text reference to a big form, and we'll go over this in the next class, but we're going to look at things. So today is Tuesday, right? So we can look at Monday for this week and see what the purchases were for Monday, what the sales were for Monday, and get a cost percent for Monday. But what we could also do is go through October 1st through the 18th and have all of our purchases to date and all of our sales to date and have a cost percent to date. We can compare that to last October, the first 18 days, or to the first 18 days in September. If we did that here in Thibodeau, comparing October, December to September, what would we see this year? We might see two big zeros, because there are some places that haven't even reopened yet from this one. But for the places that do open, we're definitely going to see a zero for the first 2 weeks of September, and then hopefully better numbers for October. Okay, and we just went through all of these. This is the same thing as what was on the monthly food cost. It's just talking about it on a daily basis. So talk about what gets added and subtracted from your food cost. So I think we have a form coming up, and I just talked through this. So here is an example of a daily cumulative cost report. So we've got the week of February 1st through the 5th. And for each day, we have our cost directs and stores, adjustments or transfers, things that are added in, subtracted off, and then we can calculate our total cost for today. And since we're looking at this whole week, we're going to have a column that says to date. So on Monday, the 1st, is going to be the same number. But on Tuesday, we're going to add these two numbers together and get this total. Okay, so this is looking at cost day by day, and then for the whole week, it's 55.55. We're also going to look at our sales the same way, day by day, and then a running total for the week. And we'll look at food cost percent. And this is where the calculation gets a little bit tricky. In these to date columns, we're just adding everything together. But when we do food cost percent, you're doing a division. So you're actually going to have to go for today. You take the food cost for today divided by the sales for today, and that's our food cost percent. And on Tuesday, look at that. Today gives us 37%. But for the to date, and then look at the 2137 total and the 5697 total, and that's going to give us this food cost percent. So we can look day by day to see how much variance there is on our food cost percentage. You can see on Wednesday, our food cost percent was almost 40%. And on Friday, it was only 31%. But for the whole week, we ran at 36%. That's what this number is telling us. This column is not going to swing around so much, but from day to day, your food cost percentages can vary. And it may be, maybe by Friday, oops. And maybe by Friday, like some of those stores we've been carrying over for several days, so we don't have to order more out of stores. And like on Wednesday, we had a higher, probably about $100 higher in stores. Take a look at the two. Anyway, you can use these reports, compare week to week, month to month, year to year, all of those kind of things. And we're going to see more forms like this that show like a day by day comparison as well as a sum to date. So you would get daily reports. Then you want daily reports so you can be looking at this and know right away if there's something that's going on. Now we're going to talk about inventory comparisons. There's something called book inventory, and then there's your actual or your physical inventory. So when you are doing all your paperwork throughout the month, the accounting people are keeping track of how many steaks you purchased, how many you sell every day, and then at the end of the period, they're going to say, okay, you should have this many steaks left in inventory. And when you do the inventory, you want those numbers to match up. So we have some formulas. We're going to take a look at the opening inventory, just like we're looking at food costs. Look at the purchases, subtract the issues out of the storeroom into the kitchen, the closing book value of the store's inventory. They should be identical. In a perfect world, they're going to be identical. If they are not identical, there are some reasons that are very bad, and there are some reasons that are okay. So, acceptable reasons for them to be different. Somebody makes an error in the math, either calculating a dollar amount or counting like the physical inventory. This happens quite a bit where you would have to go back, double check the physical inventory and go, oh, look, there's a whole other case that we didn't count. You can correct that. Using a different valuation of your inventory. Let's say you have somebody new in the bookkeeping office and they were used to doing it one way and you do it a different way. Again, this is just a paper issue. If you're using actual purchase price and somebody made a mistake and put the wrong purchase price on an item. Okay, reasons that are never acceptable. Issuing stores without requisition. So when a cook goes up to the storeroom and says, I need a case of sirloin steaks, and the answer should be, where is your requisition? You need to have that documented, but a lot of places are not going to be that strict, and so they're not going to have a record of it going out to the kitchen. This is just plain waste. It could be meats, it could be produce, it could be anything. Letting things get so old that they rot and you can't sell them. And then the last one is the theft of food. So once you go through, and the bookkeeping people are going to know how to go about determining whether it's one of these reasons or something over here. And it may take a couple of run-throughs, but that's the whole reason you have checks and balances in place. Okay, so another handout. Okay, so this sheet has a lot of information on it. It's called the menu engineering worksheet. There's a copy of it on Moodle. All right, so this is a sheet that we use to analyze how well our menu is performing. So the things that we are given are things that we would know from our restaurant. We have a record of our sales in the first two columns. Sold 72 strip steaks, 61 chicken breasts. And then we know what our food cost for each of these things is, and we know what our menu price is. Okay. So menu mix percent, like we've seen before with the sales mix, menu mix, popularity index, it's all the same thing. Relative to the total number sold, this is an easy way to say that prime rib is our biggest seller at 15.7%. Looks like this manicotti and this fruits of the sea are both low at 4%. Take a look at our food cost percent, which we looked at any number of times. And then we have our item contribution margin. And that's showing us for each menu item what its contribution margin is. And the contribution margin covers fixed costs and profit. Everybody remember that from the last exam? So the higher the contribution margin is, the more profit we're going to be able to make. So if we're looking at things on here, like it would be really helpful to sell the New York strip steak and the baked stuffed shrimp and this fruits of the sea. They have individually, they have high contribution margin. Okay. And then your next page is just like step by step how we're calculating each one of these things. And this spreadsheet is on Moodle, and it has all of the formulas in it already. So you're free to download that, and when you get other problems with them, you can just put the numbers in for it. So first thing we're going to look at is our menu cost, which is column B, which is how many of each dish that we sold, times column D, which is the food cost percent. Or not the food cost percent, is the dollar food cost. So we can see for our whole menu, get a total at the bottom of just under $5,000 in food costs. Okay. And the next column is going to be menu sales or menu revenue. And that's again, just the number sold times the sales price. So see that we've sold a total of $13,500. And then the last one here is the menu contribution margin, where we take each individual item's menu or contribution margin multiplied by the number sold. This is helpful because this is telling me where my profit is coming from. Like I can clearly see that prime rib of beef is giving me a large number in the menu contribution margin column. So is the strip steak, and so is the baked stuffed shrimp. If you look at these three numbers, they always have to add up your sales and your contribution margin, I'm sorry, your cost, which would be your variable cost, and your contribution margin have to add up to your total sales. So this 4,900 plus the 8,700 is equal to the 13,687. Well, that's a way to double check that you are getting the correct calculations. what we have down here in box K is total food cost divided by total food sales. So this is our food cost percent for the menu as it's selling. And over here, we have in box O, we've got our total contribution margin for the menu divided by box N. This is where people will get confused. This is box N over here, which is the total number of plates sold. So this box is going to tell us our average contribution margin, which is going to be important for us. We use that if we need to determine how many guests we're going to have to break even or to make a certain profit. On this form, we're going to use it as a comparison. So I'm going to get rid of all of the colors. And we're going to look at contribution margin category. So we'll look at our individual, our average contribution margin and compare it to each item's contribution margin. So if this number is greater than or equal to this number, we're going to put an H in for high. And if it's less than, we're going to put an L. So we have our column of H's and L's in here. And see, 975 is lower, 995 is lower, 8 1/4, 705. Those are all lower than the 1098. And then, okay, this one's fun too. Box Q. Box Q has to do with the menu mix. So what we do is we take 1 divided by the number of items, and that is over here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 total menu items. So we're looking at how many items are on the menu when we're calculating this number. So we're taking 1 divided by 12 and then multiplying that by 70%. So this is giving us, if we just did 1 divided by 12, that would give us like the exact average of 12 menu items, what the sales mix should be. That makes sense? I did that. Okay. If I did that, it would be 8.3%. Highlight all of this. The average down here is 8.3%. But instead, we're multiplying it by 70%, and we're going to use this number of 5.8%. Okay, so the natural question is why? Why do we multiply it by 70% instead of using just the straight average of the 8.3%? It's a really silly reason. It's because the authors of this book like to do the 70%. And so that's what we're going to do. When you take some of the upper level classes, you'll see more columns on the menu engineering worksheet, and some of them will use just the straight average. Some of them will use 80% or 60%. And they're going to look at things in a whole different way. Every time you see this form, you're going to see the formulas on it for what you have to do. And again, whenever you're doing anything outside of the class, you can use this spreadsheet that already has the formulas in it. So for menu mix category, we're going to compare each menu item's menu mix to the number that we have in box Q. If it's higher or equal to, it'll get an H. If it's lower than, it'll get an L. So once we're done with that, we're going to have two columns with the contribution margin and the menu mix categories. Once we have that, we're going to have classifications for the menu items. And there are 4 classifications. So we can have a star, a puzzle, a dog, and a plow horse. So a star is something that each time a plate goes out, we're making above average contribution margin. So it's contributing to the profit. And we're selling a lot of it. So that's a really good thing. Typically, you don't want to change anything about that menu item. It's selling well already, and if you've got a low enough food cost that it's making you money. In some cases, you might consider raising the sales price, but you've got to realize how sensitive it will be. Like if you raise the sales price by $1, the sales might go down a little bit, or they might go down a lot. Next category is when the contribution margin is high, but the sales mix is low. So this is something that we're not selling as much of, but if we could sell more of it, we could make more money, make more profit. So you can do things like have servers promote that item. Like when people sit down, they're like, what do you like to eat on the menu? Or what's really good today? And you know, as long as you feel honest saying this is really good, go ahead and push this thing so you can get higher profits for the restaurant. We have something that's a low contribution margin and a low menu mix. So we're gonna remove these from the menu unless there's a valid reason for keeping. If we take a look and see what our dogs are, I think we have the 2. We have manicotti and chicken albufera. Okay, so those are both dogs. So are we going to take both of them off, or is there a reason one is there? Or why are they dogs? Can you tell anything just by looking at the menu? Okay, so if you could bump up the sales number, get this 5.6% up over the 5.8. Okay, that would work because you need to sell more of it, and who knows what chicken albufera is? Anybody taken stock sauces and soups? You're in it this semester, or you already? Okay, you should have made an albufera, or the class should have made an albufera sauce. It's a velouté based sauce. I can't remember what makes it albufera. Pardon me?
Probably during COVID.
Probably during COVID, yeah, so you couldn't taste it or anything. That's all right, nobody ever remembers from any classes. So if a room full of culinary students doesn't know what chicken albufera is, like the general population is not going to know it either. The other thing is, we have a chicken item on the menu already. We have chicken breasts. And those are selling above average. Although they have a pretty low contribution margin, lower than the chicken albufera. So we might, could be that one of them is cannibalizing sales from the other one since they're both chicken dishes. So we might consider like, getting rid of one or just getting rid of both of those and having a whole different chicken dish. That's a possibility. What if this okay, so what if this were liver and onions and it's a dog on our menu? Why would we want to keep it on the menu? Pardon me? Right. Older people, like older people who typically have a little bit of cash and might bring family with them. So you might want to leave something like that on if you know like who's coming in to eat it and that they're bringing more money in, kind of a hidden thing. So you have to know who's in your restaurant. Okay, dogs, and then plow horses. Contribution margin is low, but we're selling a lot of it. So our plow horse, got a couple of them. We've got a pork rib and our chicken breasts. Okay, so the problem with these is like an individual plate isn't making us that much profit. We're already selling a bunch of it, so selling more of it isn't going to solve our problem. We need to either reduce the food cost or increase the menu price, or both. So, like if we're serving like 2 full chicken breasts on a plate, and that's costing us $4.20, and we're selling this for $12.45. Maybe that's too much chicken. If we see people are like ordering go boxes for something on the thing, it could tell you your portion size might be too big. You look for less expensive ingredients. And it depends on your menu item. The other thing I wanted to talk about was on the manicotti that's a dog. What is unique about that on this menu? Steak, beef, ribs, pork, chicken, salmon, shrimp, chicken. It's technically fruits of the sea will have some pasta on it. But with a bunch of like squid and clams and mussels and that kind of stuff. It's a vegetarian option. Okay. Any vegetarians in the house? Just like if that were the vegetarian option, like, would it make you want to order it, or would you like get a salad or go somewhere else? If that's our vegetarian option, we might look for something that is more appealing, something that, like this whole menu is kind of a goofy menu. There's not really a theme to it. It just seems like some random things that were put onto a menu. So there could be a lot of things, but our main goal is to increase this column here so that we can get a higher profit for our restaurant. And this is going into module 4. So we pretty much finished module 3. But I wanted to introduce you to this because we're going to come up in module 4, and it's going to be part of our project. So whenever we do the project, you'll each have a menu engineering worksheet to complete. Okay, so any questions on this? Yes. Why would we keep this? I don't, if this is a firework, we would look into this because of this high right here. It has potential. And if we can figure out a way to sell more of it, it could be that people don't know what it is. It could be, like, I don't imagine this would be a very popular dish here unless we use like local oysters and shrimp. The folks around here eat squid very much. And I know a shrimper, and like when they caught squid, they gave it to me because they weren't going to eat it. Okay. So I think that, like, if it were here, it's probably not the place. I definitely saw this like in places like New York City long before y'all were born. And that's like a lot of the things on this menu are things that kind of go back quite a few decades. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Can you go back over the butcher test?
Yeah. Okay, so the butcher test card. This is, yeah, I think this was the example sheet that we had. So we're buying a beef tenderloin. This is a small one. It weighs 5 pounds, and the purchase price is $7.03 per pound. So the total cost is $35. And what we're doing is we're having our butcher shop cut it and weigh what they have. So they end up with 12 ounces of fat. I'm going to skip the loss in cutting for right now. There's going to be also 12 ounces of tip meat that we can use for something else. And that's going to leave us with 3 pounds, 4 ounces of usable meat to go ahead and make our individual fillets out of. So what we're doing then is going to take this original cost of $35 and anything that was worth anything here. So in this case, it's just the tip meat. And it's worth $2.49 a pound to us. Going to multiply that by the 12 ounces, and it comes out to $1.87. So we're going to deduct that off of the purchase price. And that means that our usable meat, 3 pounds, 4 ounces, our actual cost on it is $33. Okay. The loss in cutting comes from, like, after you have it cleaned up and you're going to do, in this case, we're doing 6 ounce portions. you're gonna have like, they have to be a minimum of 6 ounces. If you have somebody that's really good, they're still gonna get like 6.1 ounces or 6.2 ounces. You're kind of losing that in the cutting process. Because it would be really bad if you cut one that was 5.5 ounces. Okay. So then, once we know that value, we can calculate the cost of a usable pound and a usable ounce. So we have 3 pounds and 4 ounces of usable meat. And I think this is the one that had an error. Yeah, that would be 3.25. So the cost to us is really $10.24 a pound for each one of those. For each of the usable pounds that we have left. And then if we divide that by 16, it's going to be 64 cents an ounce. So we have our portion size of 6 ounces. That means our portion cost would be just 6 times the 64 cents or $3.84. So when we put that onto a plate and we're going to sell it to somebody, we know that's what our food cost is going to be. And then to calculate these cost factors, take a look at, we're looking at cost factor per pound and proportion. So we're going to look at this cost of each usable pound and compare that to the purchase price. So if we divide the cost by the purchase price, we get this 1.4566. And then same thing for the portion cost. Take the $3.84 and divide it by $7.03, and you get 0.5462. So once you have that, if the purchase price changes, instead of having to go through all that exercise again, you just take your cost factor, so for per pound, the 1.4566, multiply that by the 750. That's going to tell you how much a usable pound costs. And then that's also going to tell you what your new portion cost is. And then that's going to help you decide whether you're going to make a change in your menu and increase the sales price. And we'll see, like when we do a review for the next exam, you don't have to do any of this. In fact, you will have this information and you'll have the new purchase price. All you have to do is multiply it. Was there anything else on there? Okay. All righty. Any other questions? All righty. We'll see you on YouTube.